Over the next few weeks, I will be sharing a series of discussions with several of my friends on mission titled How a Disciple Making Movement, or DMM, helps to meet the needs of the community. Each of the guests live in neighborhoods, communities, and cultures within those communities with a diversity of people and needs. And they are all representing Christ and helping bring his peace in ways that are culturally relevant and theologically sound. I am excited to share this with you and encourage you not to miss any of the episodes with the guest in this series. Now prepare to engage with this week's episode. My name is Thomas Clark, and welcome to the Takeoff podcast, where myself and guests help equip you to bring the peace of God to the place you live, work, learn, and play, all for his glory. Every problem is a discipleship problem. Being a disciple of Christ does not guarantee that we will not have problems. It does, however, give us the tools to face the challenges of life that come our way. My worldview is that Christ transforms culture, and he does it through his followers. The goal of Takeoff is to equip you for movemental thinking when it comes to making disciples. This is season 4, and I am excited about all the possibilities and everything we have lined up for this season. Okay, let's get into it. In the last episode, you heard the beginning of my conversation with Ruth Price. Now, let's jump in and pick up where we left off in the last episode with part 2 of how a disciple-making movement helps meet the needs of the community with Ruth Price. Now, you all, we've talked with other friends on mission about the second place. That is where we work. And as Ruth has said, she's retired now, and so we won't talk much about that. But again, I think this is a just, in my opinion, a testament to how God uses us at every stage of life, and continues us at every stage of life. Because even in a retirement phase from employment, she's not retired from discipleship. And I want to say that again, you may be retired from employment, but not retired from discipleship, because Christ always wants us to do that. So that's the second place. Yet at the same time, we have what we talk about being the third place. That's the place we hang out. Typically, it's somewhere in our community, where we can. We should be able at least to walk to it, or it's close, really almost within the mile radius of where we live. For some people, maybe a restaurant, the laundromat, a theater, or whatever it is. But it's someplace in the community, a community center. Um, but somewhere we can go and allow us to build social momentum, allow us to get to know people and see people who may not necessarily live right there on our block, even though you just mentioned you like all over the place, 3 blocks away and all that. But they may not necessarily be right there, but they're in the community. And the reason that's important is because we can see them like we do where we live, like those who work do where they work, where we hang out at our third place. We can see these people regularly enough to have relationship with them and build this momentum with them. So how have you been incarnate in any of the places where you may go and hang out?
Okay, well, um, through getting to know people's concerns and what they were interested in, um, I learned that we have a community garden, and it's right at the end of the 3 blocks of my street. Um, and they are very much, a lot of them are very much involved in the community garden. So I make a point to go down there. I've gone down there and served refreshments and um, done different things to bring awareness to the community garden. It is called Harambee, and the B is BEE on the end because it's a bee. I guess what you call a sanctuary, or I don't know what you call it, but anyway, the bees are there, and they have their little garden plots there, and it holds a lot of historical interest. And so, from time to time, there's food and music down there, and then I have um, sponsored some of our social momentum um, events there, with food. And, not only is it these folk, but it's people in the area. We even had some people that were walking down the street they were from Germany, and they stopped by, and I got to meet them. But it is a great way to meet people, to extend God's peace to people. Um, if people, sometimes even some of the people I know, they might get out somewhere and they're not feeling well, and I can pray with them. Just whatever is needed. God shows you, opportunities where you can help people. And so that's one place, the community garden. Another place is the Austin Town Hall has had different blues shows, and at the Columbus Park Refectory, they have jazz shows from time to time. So I try to make those because I do meet a lot of my neighbors. And then that's not exclusive to just us. So you meet people. I've met some of my other relatives that I didn't know were going to be there. But you might meet the politicians, and you might meet um, we have a blues great that lives right down the street from me, Larry Taylor, and he does these free shows from time to time. So it's just looking for opportunities to be in in relationship with people and listening to them. Maybe eating with them. I try to provide refreshments sometimes. Sometimes these places already have food, and so it's an opportunity.
No, that's good. Again, you're saying so much that can be unpacked. I mean, you about eating, and we've shared before on the podcast about the blessed rhythms,
Hmm.
BLESS, and the E. Well, let me go through them all quickly. B is being prayer. L is listen with intentionality. E is eat a meal, and something happens when people eat meals together. How they're relaxed and they're more comfortable, and you can tend to be more transparent and vulnerable when you eat a meal. The first S is to serve and be served. And last S, share a story about Christ when it's appropriate and really based on what you've heard when you listen. You know what to say to somebody, and so essentially, you have just in the time we've talked now talked about almost all five of the blessed rhythms that you've been doing. That the last one you just mentioned is eating, but then the other thing you said, which again I want to just stress or point out to again for all those who are engaging with us in this episode is that there are hidden gems in many of our communities that we don't even know exist. You mentioned the community
Right.
garden, and so when people say, "Well, I don't have a third space. I don't know what my third space is," or "I don't," well, perhaps. But I just thought about something else when you just said that, because perhaps there is a third space that you don't know is there, but then also there's nothing stopping anyone from creating a third space. Someone had to come with the idea of starting a community garden. And so there's nothing stopping, if you're engaging with us now in this episode and you're interested in the disciple making movement and you say, well, what can I do in my community beyond my immediate block and beyond my job or my place of employment? What can I do? And well, there it is right there. What Ruth just said, the community garden could be something. It could be about the bees. It could be. It was funny you said that. In my other job, I have a other job downtown Chicago, and I saw something. They sent a note a couple of days ago, and I forgot that on the roof of the building, the roof is downtown Chicago, is 40 some odd stories high, and on the roof of the building, they have beehives when we're open. And that's what I'm hoping this episode does. All these episodes, but this one in particular, is that it helps people who are engaging to think about ways God can use you to be able to connect with people, ultimately, so you connect them with Christ to make disciples. But we have to connect with people so we can do that. So I'm glad you mentioned. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Um, one of the things we talk about, and you mentioned this also, that Christ transforms culture, and that is the worldview we have. Only Christ can transform culture. It does not mean culture is going to be perfect, because nothing is perfect but Christ Himself. And because we live in a fallen world where sin exists, the world itself will not be perfect um, until it's all said and done in Christ. Ultimately, heaven and earth is destroyed, and new heaven, new earth are created, and sin, Satan are eradicated forever. But until that time, there's always going to be challenges in this world. That's just the reality of it. Yet we do believe, we talk about transforming culture, that his peace can be present also. And our job is to help bring his peace and help it. And that's why our mission at the Launching Pad is we invade the world with salvation, discipleship, and nurturing to do just that. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing to help invade the world. That I say it all the time when I say thank you for what you do, but you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for Christ and His kingdom. But I do say thank you for what you're doing, to help invade the world. Now, I want to pivot just a moment and talk about the fact, something I've read in each episode in the series. I've read this Luke 16:8. It says, "So the master praised the dishonest manager for being clever. Yes, worldly people are more clever with their own kind than spiritual people are." Because one of the things that the world tends to do is assess what's needed and how to best meet needs. And so they look at it, and they determine, they have their matrix determining, your business. You want to open up a store. It's best to look, particularly if you want to get a loan for that store, you need to look and see, are there other stores like that in the area? Because any bank that really knows what they're doing, that loan officer is not going to give you a loan if there are three other stores on that in that area, in the immediate area, and you're trying to get the same type of store. It's like, well, why should we give you a loan for the same type of store? Because they want to return that investment. And for followers of Christ, though, sometimes what we tend to do is just see what we think is needed. Now, you've mentioned several times have a conversation and seeing what's needed, but too often, follow those in the church, quote unquote church, have looked at what we thought was needed and then tried to meet needs based on what we think people need, not what they truly need. So I want to ask you. You've talked about it a little bit. Just ask you to unpack this a little bit more. How have you assessed the needs? Have you assessed the needs in your mission field where God has you? What have you done to assess what's needed?
I actually have asked. I've asked my neighbors. Um, well, getting down the basic need, we all need that relationship. God made us He put in us that we have to have relationship with other people. That's our first need. But then once we get past that, we can't just guess at what might be someone's need or concern. I've used the that Facebook page I mentioned for the neighbors. To I've done Google surveys to ask them what they wanted. What kinds of activities would you like to see? Would you be interested in a garage sale, not a garage sale, but a sale on the front, a yard sale? Would you be interested in that kind of thing? What are your thoughts about um, the bouncy house for the children, just different things. So I actually have surveyed them. Now the thing about it is, you can ask them, and what concerns us this month, if something happens, if there's a theft or a shooting or a death, that's going to change what the needs are. So you can't just take that one survey and say, well, this is what they said they needed. So we have to be constantly mindful of situations and ask people what are their concerns. Um, and then go back and assess. Like right now, I need to assess what we did in 2025 so I can look at 2026 and see what kinds of activities we need to focus on this year. And so that'll be a survey, and if you can't, there are some that you cannot, like you said, they haven't embraced technology yet. So yeah, I have to get some of the young people to actually take, a flyer or something that asks those questions. But it's like I say, it's constantly changing. I also go to community meetings. We have our meetings with our police district, and there's different organizations that also have meetings, and you can listen and find out what people are interested in, what they're concerned about, what are the problems, what are the issues. And so, you have to do all of that. You do have to be a little active. It does take some effort, but this is what we do.
No, I'm glad you said that, because in the disciple making movement, it does take effort. It does. And if anyone, and I so appreciate your not only saying that part, but then talking about some of the effort that goes into it. And I want to be clear to all those who are engaging that at the end of the day, that the end goal always is to help people follow Christ. But we have to earn that trust and that relationship, and so that can happen. But at the same time, we're not so heavenly focused. Yes, we are focused on Matthew 6 and 10, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. Yes, that is a focus, but we're not so focused on that we miss the idea, overlook the idea, or skirt around the idea that we still have to, as you said, have relationships, and people need relationships, which means then things are fluid, which means then, like you said, when things happen, as people say, life starts life and whatever else, that I can't be so, well, you told me yesterday you wanted this, and yet they're faced with conflict. Because if we're going to go back to what we said earlier, we really be incarnate, we have to show up in the flesh all the time. And with the sensitivity that, hey, yes, you wanted this, but you had some type of situation, be it a personal conflict, a community conflict, a city conflict, a state conflict, a national conflict, or international conflict. All of these things have the potential, economic, all of these things, health wise, all of these things have the potential to impact the people right there with us. But then God has play again. I can't, overlook the fact that why are we incarnate? Why does he want to live through us? So that when people face these things, whatever it is they face, they can know that Christ, who Emmanuel, God with us, that he's with us, and he's with us through his followers. So I really like that. Thank you for sharing and ways you've assessed the needs, and what you said is essentially is that it is ongoing. It is not just having assessed, but
Hmm.
it's assessing. It's continuing to
Yeah.
assess the needs in the community. Now, now sometimes when that happens, and all of us can be what we call ethnocentric, and sometimes in assessing, we can be ethnocentric, and we have to guard against that. For those who don't know, ethnocentrism is using one's own culture to measure others, put our own culture at the center of interpretation, and unfortunately sometimes we devalue the other culture, because we think they should do it like I do it. I don't know why you don't do it like I do it, or my way is the only way. Or we judge people based on how we do things. Has there, first of all, been times, and this is a loaded question because I know for me, all of I've been ethnocentric. I just mentioned this past Sunday in the message. All of us can be, all of us are ethnocentric, but have there been times in your life where you've been ethnocentric?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much for coming by the podcast page. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, the information that is shared has and will be able to benefit you and also the people you know. Listen, if it is, has been, or you believe it will benefit you, I'm asking you to do me two favors. First of all, please follow. Yeah, click follow. That way, every time a new episode is released, you will be alerted and you can stay current on everything that we're talking about. But additionally, I'm going to ask that you consider supporting. Your financial support goes a long way to help me help others in the work that we're doing in creating the disciple-making movements. For your monthly or yearly support, not only will you receive access to episodes before everyone else does, but you also will, on a monthly basis, have a live Q&A with me where I will be able to answer questions based on the episodes and questions you may have from what's been shared. There's only so much that myself and my guests can say during the podcast recordings, but during the live Q&A, we can take a deeper dive into questions you may have, ways that we've seen it play out and work out, and perhaps even some suggestions that you may have that we may be able to comment on to help you and help equip you to help bring the peace of God to the places you live, work, learn, and play. Thank you again for following and for supporting. I appreciate it.
Well, I was thinking about that very thing. And of course, I'm sure there have been, but I've been conscious about this. We've been talking about ethnocentric for a while now. And so I've been more conscious of not being self opinionated. I really am working on that with myself. So I can give you a kind of funny story. I don't know. Um, I have a neighbor that has a tree that's so old. It is so old that every time there's a storm, something falls off the tree, a branch, a limb. It damages his property, not mine, because I'm across the alley. But and I wonder. I had all the trees around my house pretty much cut down because I didn't want that happening. And I would started to think to myself, um, I would have cut that tree down. Why would he continue to have that tree to fall in his garage and damage his property? And I had to think about my attitude to myself. I had to question myself. You know, um, it's not your tree, but try to look at it from his point of view. And so with that, and I know I had talked to him, in the past about, how he came to be in the neighborhood, and he has been here for forever. He grew up in this neighborhood, bought his own family home and the one next to it that had belonged to his aunt. So I thought about that. When I thought about that, I said, well, he's been here, all his life, and probably the lives of his parents. And I looked at that tree. And I said, that tree's got maybe 200 years old. I mean, it is huge, but every time there's a storm, part of it falls off. And I'm like, why wouldn't he deal with that? Um, and I had to think about that because from his point of view, probably first of all, it's sentimental value. It's natural, it's something natural, and a lot of people are very conscious of the nature, and that. And it's probably several hundred years old and it's actual value to him. And it's something that he values that I would not. And I had to think about, well, um, I don't think I'm going to ask him about why he does that. I think I'm going to dodge that bullet and not be ethnocentric on that. Um, That's all I'm going to say. I have to be very careful not to offend him because it probably would offend him if I said, "Well, why do you keep this tree? It's clearly damaging your property every time there's a wind. We get a lot of wind or a storm. Something is going to fall off the tree. I'm not going to offend him with that. And that's a conscious choice.
Well, that's good of you. That's good, and that leads me to we should instill be ethnographic, which is engaging people in their culture based on our experience with them, and not our own cultural thoughts, interpretation of what they're doing, and
Yeah.
so really just again know your neighbor, love your neighbor, letting Christ be seen through you in your neighbor's life, and if the conversation about the tree ever comes up, it is based on the relationship that's been established and not your presuppositions as to why he shouldn't even have it there. So that's good. That's good. But it really helps us determine and have guardrails on how we deal with people, and that's so important. That's so important. I like that's so important. Now, one of the things I was going to ask, which you delved into it already, actually, is the idea, because I was going to mention and compare and contrast what we do, what Jesus did, how he fed the 5,000,
Hmm.
yet on the next day he didn't feed them. He didn't feed them because that's not what they needed, and he
Hmm.
knew you no longer needed that. But you already talked about continuing to assess needs, and so you don't keep giving people something if that's not what they need, if that's not what was required. So that's beautiful. I mean, and so again, and I'm stressing this again to all those who are engaging with us, because and I'm hoping this conversation I've had with Price will help those who either are in the discipleship movement, interested in the discipleship movement, or you want to start one, really to see that this is life. It's not just what we call a secular sacred divide. That is, it's not that I go to church on Sunday and then the rest of my week I do what I want to do. No, Christ is in us all the time. He lives in us 24/7, and wherever we are. And for us, the definition of church is the presence of Jesus in the people of Jesus everywhere, all the time. And so at the community garden, Ruth Price is church. When she's talking to the neighbor and hoping the wind ain't blowing so the tree don't fall while she's standing there talking to the neighbor, Ruth Price is church. When she knows the young people out front of the house and doing a memorial for someone, Ruth Price is church. And that's so important, that we can help people see that he wants to be present in our lives through us all the time, and we can connect people with him, make disciples, and help what we're doing to multiply and grow in organic ways, natural ways, real ways. Then that's important. And so yes, we know the enemy, but we don't spend our time focusing on the enemy. We see what God is doing, we see what the community needs, and then we look to operate knowing that God gives people what we call a local theology and testimony. We have a global God with a local theology, or we're global. He's a big God serving this big old world, yet he shows up locally, and that is incredible. I want to ask, first of all, say thank you again for sharing, and I do hope you was probably for sharing, and those who've been with us, thank you so much for engaging. I hope that our talking in a moment, I ask you if any final thoughts you want to say, but I want to tell those who are engaging with us this first, and that is, I hope that through this conversation, you've seen, no matter your stage in life, no matter your age in life, that God can use you, that He can use you to show up through your life with the intent on helping other people connect with Him and be His. It's not hard. It's not some mystical thing. You don't need to have gone to school and gotten some major degree. All you got to do is be available. And that's the beautiful thing about it, because when you're available, he invigorates, and Ruth Price can attest that he can actually even help reinvigorate, so that you're able to do. And doesn't mean she doesn't get tired sometimes, but it means that Christ energizes her, reinvigorates her to do what he wants done for his kingdom, for his glory. So I really appreciate that. Any final thoughts, thing you want to say before we before I give people the challenge and ask them questions? Anything you want to say? Thoughts you have?
Yes, I just want to encourage everyone that um, we must be prayerful and we must be present. Make ourselves available, make time for others in our lives, and take the time to listen to them so that we can see where God is working. We want to join Him where He's already working.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Yes, yes, he's moving. He's moving. He's moving. And with that, if someone were to ask, I'm talking to those who are engaging. If you heard someone ask, "Where is God?" They look around what's going on, and say, "Where is God? Where is God? Where is God?" Then what you can say, what she just said, that well, He's everywhere, but most of all, He wants to be here through you.
Yeah,
We're looking for someone else to come do something. He said, "Let me be here through you, and then I will be present." So that's good. So I want to ask, and those if you're first time here, then this is new to you. If it's not your first time, then you're used to this, and that is questions. I always end with questions for you, and hopefully you will share this with someone. First of all, that you would look to support, that you would look to subscribe. This is free to subscribe. That way, every time an episode drops, you will get notified, and the podcast is heard or available, I should say, on all the major podcasting sites. So, whatever your favorite one is, it's there, and so subscribe. But then support. And for as little as $3 a month, if you elect to, you can support the work that's being done. One of the benefits of supporting like that is you will have access to episodes before anyone else, but also monthly we'll do a live Q&A where I will come on and answer questions based on the podcast. Don't ask me questions about the economy. I ain't gonna answer that one. But if you ask me questions about the podcast, and perhaps sometimes, if they're available, we'll ask when we do a live, some of the friends on mission to join for that live, to answer questions about perhaps some of the things that they've discussed. So thank you for that. But here's what I want to ask you to do again: a couple of questions. First of all, how can you show up and address the needs of the community in which you live, work, learn, and play, specifically based on what Ruth Price has shared? How can you show up and let Christ show up through you? I don't just want to hear about a lot of good ideas. How can Christ show up through you and address the needs of the community where you live, work, learn, and play? And then secondly, what is your I will statement? Based on what's been said, then I will, and you fill in the blank. I will blank. What are you going to do? What are you going to start or stop doing? And then, of course, who are you going to share it with to keep this thing going? Who are you going to talk to? Who can help you be accountable to keep your word? Listen, I so appreciate you all, for being with us on this episode of Takeoff with Thomas Clark. And this week, one of my friends on mission has joined. I so thank you. And as always, you all, you know what we're gonna do? Let's take off.